is Jazzi and welcome back to my channel. So if you don't know, I am a huge Simpsons fan. My brothers and I are constantly quoting Simpsons anytime we're near each other. Most of the time when we're texting each other, we're either quoting Simpsons or sending each other Simpsons clips. So since it's the Christmas season and I love Simpsons, I thought it would be interesting to watch all the Simpsons Christmas episodes and rank them. Now I have a few disclaimers. First, even though Dude, Where's My Ranch, Mr. Plow, and Homer vs. Dignity were all included in the Simpsons Christmas DVD that I owned, I'm not including them on this list. This is because none of those episodes were really set during Christmas. In Dude, Where's My Ranch, only the opening is set during Christmas, and that's just to start the plot of Homer writing a song about how much he hates Flanders. I'm also not including the Simpsons Christmas short that aired when they were on the Tracy Ullman Show. This is because this ranking is only including full episodes. This is why I'm also not including the Simpsons Christmas short, The Simpsons Meet the Bocellis, that aired this year. Also, while watching all these episodes, I really couldn't find one that I would consider bad, so I'm not actually rating this from worst to best. I'm rating it more like least enjoyable to most enjoyable. Anyway, without further ado,
Well, I have been zinged and I love it.
Gone Boy is the 9th episode of the 29th season. In this episode, Bart goes missing after falling into an abandoned bunker. The whole town searches for him, including Sideshow Bob, which gives him an opportunity to try and kill Bart. Of course, at the last second, he doesn't go through with it because the show wouldn't be able to use him anymore. Despite this being a Christmas episode, it's very scarce on Christmas references and imagery. The only Christmassy thing about the episode is really just the opening credits, which is why it's ranked so low on my list. As an episode as a whole, I thought it was enjoyable. I'm a big fan of the Bob and Bart dynamic, and they did enough to make it fun to watch even after all these years. I thought the best bit might have been when Sideshow Bob stabbed his therapist in the thigh, even though I saw it coming.
Why do I keep giving them scissors?
Also, the ending where Bob becomes a lighthouse keeper weirdly makes sense for him. And again, I knew they would probably find a way to retcon Bob getting over his obsession of killing Bart. So for all those reasons, that's why I'm ranking this as number 20. Major Things is the 16th episode of the 32nd season. Despite this episode originally airing in March, the entire plot is set during Christmas, so I'm including it on this list. In this episode, Homer tells the story of how a Todd's first Christmas ornament ended up on their tree. In a flashback set in 2014, Marge kicked Homer out of the house after he got drunk during the plant's office Christmas party after promising not to. What Marge didn't know was that Lenny and Carl spiked Homer's drink. Wait, Lenny?
Oh no, not Lenny! Not Lenny!
This resulted in Homer staying with Flanders, which eventually resulted in Homer helping Maude give birth to Todd. So there's a lot in that plot summary that contributed to this episode's ranking. First, I understand that the show has pretty much been on since as long as I've been alive, so it doesn't make sense anymore to set flashbacks in the 80s and 90s anymore. However, it still weirds me out to see flashbacks set in the early 2000s and 2010s. Second, the show would sometimes imply that despite his height, Todd was older than Rod. Granted, this was during a freeze frame gag in the episode Homer Bad Man. Still, even if Todd is younger than Rod, he's definitely supposed to be older than Lisa. This is because in the episode Lisa's First Word, Todd is with Flanders when they come over to welcome the Simpsons to their new house. And this is when Marge is currently pregnant with Lisa. However, in this episode, Lisa is a baby and Maude is pregnant with Todd. This isn't the first time that the show has retconned stuff, and it's not going to be the last. So this ranking is mostly out of pettiness, but it's my channel and I get to be petty. I will say I did enjoy seeing younger Bart and Lisa because they're very cute, but that wasn't enough to salvage this for me. This episode is the 10th episode of the 30th season. When the kids ask for an expensive smart TV for Christmas, Homer and Marge strategize to buy it at 6 a.m. on Black Friday at Sprawl Mart. They plan to have Marge save space in line and then switch halfway through with Homer so he can be well rested to get the TV when the store opens. Unfortunately, Homer accidentally knocks himself out, which means Marge is forced to fend for herself with frozen hands and is not able to get to the TV. Homer convinces the kids to take Marge to Florida so they can try and have a good Christmas. They end up having a terrible time but try and fake it for Marge's sake until they eventually agree to go back home for Christmas. To be honest, I think the episode had a strong first act, but the second half kind of lost it for me. I like the Black Friday shopping frenzy sequence, even though it's pretty much a cliche at this point. It was also refreshing to see Homer being a caring partner and wanting to make things up to Marge. Even though he wasn't able to make it in time to trade places with Marge, it was due to circumstances outside of his control. The Florida plot didn't really do it for me, and not just because they're supposed to be banned from the state. I just didn't find it particularly interesting, hence my ranking. This is the 9th episode of the 17th season. This episode is comprised of 3 short stories. The first is a retelling of the birth of Jesus from Homer, so you know it's accurate. The second is Grandpa telling the story of the time he helped Santa Claus get his sleigh running again after he crashed into an island he and Burns were stranded on. The third is a segment set to music from the Nutcracker. It primarily focuses on Moe's multiple suicide attempts and Homer trying to find a last-minute gift for Marge. This was an episode I remember watching when it first aired, so I do have some fond association with it. I can understand why they decided to have an episode with 3 segments, since none of them really have enough to stand alone on their own. I just wish they would have done something similar to older Treehouse of Horror episodes where they had an overall framing device. My favorite segment out of the 3 is probably Grandpa's story.
Santa, one thing's still bugging me. Why didn't you ever come back to pick me up?
I kept putting it off, and then I was just too embarrassed.
I just think there are stronger Christmas episodes than this one. This is the 8th episode of the 25th season. Thanks to global warming, Springfield becomes the only place in the US with actual snow, which causes it to become a tourist destination. Marge decides to turn their home into a hotel. Lisa, who's upset with the consumerism of Christmas, tries to give the family gifts that make her feel better about herself rather than something that they would actually like. This episode has a good premise. It's nice to see Marge as the impulsive one, although Homer and Bart get on board with the plan pretty quickly. There are also some good gags, like when Homer comes home and sees the guests in the house and thinks that he died and Marge remarried.
Oh, good. Marge remarried after I died. Wait a minute, I'm not dead? What's going on?
Or when Marge pokes fun at the inconsistent design of the Simpsons house. Overall, I don't think it really particularly stands out compared to some of the other Simpsons Christmas episodes. This is the 10th episode of the 28th season. Krusty spends Christmas with his daughter Sophie, who is now played by Natasha Lyonne, but has a hard time connecting since he's never celebrated Christmas before since he's Jewish. They spend it with the Simpsons, but Krusty ends up filming their time with them as a Christmas special for his show, which upsets Sophie, who thought this was going to be her time connecting with her dad. Reverend Lovejoy convinces Krusty to convert to Christianity in order to boost attendance for the church. Krusty thinks converting will be the best way to celebrate Christmas with his daughter. He changes his mind after talking to his dead dad, and he and Sophie spend the holidays together. There's also a subplot with Maggie and an Elf on a Shelf parody that ends with Maggie destroying it. I like that this episode brings back Sophie, even if she is played by a different actress. I like Drew Barrymore, but Natasha Lyonne does a good job, plus her raspiness makes her sound more like Krusty's daughter. The concept of Krusty being a sellout isn't exactly new, but it's nice to see him struggle with his typical opportunistic self and trying to be a good dad. The Gnome in Your Home side plot is a little on the nose, but it does lead to some pretty funny images from Maggie's point of view.
Oh, don't worry, Maggie. He can't beat the super team of Santa, Jack Frost, the Abominable Snowman, and Wayne Gretzky.
He's got a gun!
I also like the payoff of her destroying all the gnomes. 22nd episode of the 35th season. Similar to Manger Things, despite this episode being set during Christmas, it originally aired in May. This episode explores Santa's Little Helper's past and trauma. After finding an old Santa hat, Santa's Little Helper starts to act strange. The family takes him to a dog therapist played by Cate Blanchett to try and figure out what's wrong. Unfortunately, he ends up biting Marge, and the therapist takes in Santa's Little Helper to hide him so he doesn't get put down. After each family member rightfully slaps the owner, Santa's Little Helper reunites with his mom. I feel like this episode did a better job of doing what Manger Things was trying to accomplish. It explores Santa's Little Helper's past and manages to have some emotional payoff. Now, there is some slight retconning. For example, this episode acts like they haven't seen Santa's Little Helper's original owner since he abandoned him at the dog track, even though he came back in a 14th season episode to take Santa's Little Helper back after he becomes the Duff's new mascot. Now, he was never portrayed in a particularly positive light before, but it's even worse when it's revealed that he's the reason that Santa's Little Helper was separated from his mother. He explained that he did it in order to make Santa's Little Helper run faster.
Ow! Okay, I get it! Boy, suddenly the guy who tortures dogs is the bad guy.
The dog therapist was a nice addition to the episode, and Cate Blanchett plays her perfectly. She manages to nail some of the funnier moments while still hitting the emotional beats. She originally shows up with a very cold and harsh exterior, but later shows that she has a soft heart, especially for animals like Santa's Little Helper.
Oh, not through his eyes. That's the point. A dog's dominant sense is smell. He sees the world with his nose, and his nose sees so much more than our eyes.
I'll admit that the ending of the episode made me tear up, which just goes to show that even the newer episodes manage to nail the Simpsons formula of making you laugh and then making you cry. This is the 8th episode of the 22nd season. Like Simpsons Christmas stories, this is one consisting of multiple segments. Except this is with 4 instead of 3. In the first segment, Bart dreams of going to the North Pole in order to kill Santa for not giving him a dirt bike 3 Christmases ago. Lisa dreams of a Christmas set in 1944 where she hates Christmas trees because they remind her of when Marge was deployed last Christmas to fight in WW2. In the third segment, Marge dreams that Martha Stewart has come to save their Christmas. The third segment is Maggie's dream, where the family is played by all puppets and are on their way to Hawaii for Christmas. Mo is there to house sit and invites his girlfriend Katy Perry to join him. Even though this is another Christmas anthology episode, I do like that this one has a framing device. Also, even though it has 4 segments, it still manages not to be too bloated. Lisa's dream might be my favorite due to Marge being the one deployed. It leads to both funny jokes and emotional weight.
Simpson, get your helmet on.
I'm trying. It just keeps popping off.
I also love the Inglorious Bastard parody.
Nine, why did I go to the 9 o'clock show? Das ist Hitler.
Also, seeing the Simpsons as puppets parodying the Muppets was impressive and really makes the last segment of the episode worth watching. This is the 10th episode of the 9th season. Bart wakes up before the rest of the family on Christmas morning to get a head start in opening presents. While playing with his fire truck, he accidentally sets the tree on fire, which ends up destroying the rest of the presents. He buries the evidence in the snow and tells the family they were robbed. The town takes pity on them and donates money, which they spend on a car. When it's revealed that they were never robbed, the town turns on them, thinking they were all scammed. This is an older episode that I kind of have mixed feelings about, mainly due to the mean-spiritedness. I mean, the whole town heard from Bart that he lied to his family about them being robbed, yet they still choose to believe that the whole family intentionally tried to scam them.
So this was all a scam. And on Christmas.
Yeah! Jesus must be spitting in his grave!
Yes, I know that the town taking everything in the Simpsons home except for our washcloth is silly and makes sense for the world of The Simpsons, but it still always left a really bad taste in my mouth. Like I just ate some cob collage. Now there are some funny moments in the episode that kind of make up for it, like Marge epically losing at Jeopardy.
Aren't we forgetting something, Marge? You were down $5,200.
But Mr. Trebek...
I asked you before the game if you knew the rules, and you said you did. Judges?
Red Mom!
This is the 9th episode of the 18th season. In this episode, old Gil gets fired from his job at Costington's after giving Lisa the last Malibu Stacy Pony Beach party set. Marge invites Gil over for Christmas Eve, and he ends up overstaying his welcome in their home. Marge is not able to work up the gall to kick him out, and he ends up staying with them for an entire year. This episode follows the tradition of a minor character moving in with the Simpsons and then hilarity ensuing. Although in this case, it's mostly annoyance. Luckily, mostly on the family side. To be honest, I didn't really have a positive memory of this episode. However, when I rewatched it, I was surprised that I liked it a lot better than I remembered. The running gag of Homer versus the Grumple really worked for me.
What the hell is this thing?
I also like the gag of Marge having a flashback and then Homer calling her out when he asked her why she thought he was able to see that.
Marge, I have no idea what you were just thinking about. Why would you think I did?
I also like the shake-up in the dynamic where Homer is actually the sensible one and scolds Marge for not kicking Gil out. I think the reason I didn't originally hold this episode in high regard is because while Gil is fine in small doses, focusing a full episode on him is a bit much, especially when the plot of the episode focuses on him being annoying. This is the 10th episode of the 31st season. This episode once again brings back Sideshow Bob for Christmas. He's back to being obsessed with killing Bark while working as a lighthouse keeper. He gets offered a job acting as Santa for the town's Santa's Village. Meanwhile, someone is stealing packages from everyone's front porch. One of the victims, Lenny,
Not Lenny!
sees the robber and writes their initials, SB, in his blood. He's still alive, by the way. The way he said that made it seem like he died. Bart thinks this means Sideshow Bob is the robber, but they later team up to find the real culprit. They eventually find out Smithers and Burns are the real robbers.
Since when does Smithers go first?
Because Burns is upset he never got a hug and a smile from his parents. This episode is a vast improvement compared to the last Sideshow Bob Christmas episode, thanks to it actually feeling like a Christmas episode. Yeah, I'm still hung up about that. I kind of wish they had dropped Bob still wanting to kill Bart, especially since he doesn't even try anything because he's so dedicated to the role of Santa. This episode also ranks a little higher thanks to the porch pirate subplot, which leads to a lot of funny gags, like Lenny blowing up his porch.
Oh my God, you're the package thief?
I also like how they utilized Bob's acting skills by having him act like Santa in order to convince Burns that his parents' harsh upbringing actually helped him become the successful man that he is. This is the 9th episode of the 26th season. In this episode, Homer is late coming home on Christmas Eve due to spending extra time with Moe, who is suffering from holiday depression. He ends up staying longer than he expected thanks to Moe lying to him about the time. Marge gets upset with Homer for getting home so late and kicks him out of the house. Homer spends the rest of the night wandering through town. Moe later tells Marge that he was the reason Homer got home so late, so she and the kids go out to look for him. They eventually reunite at a mall staff holiday party. This was a newer episode that I saw when it originally aired. For me, the reason why I'm ranking this episode so high has to do with a lot of the atmosphere when Homer is walking alone through town. There's something oddly comforting about seeing someone walking around during Christmas at night. It's also nice seeing Homer being kind, like spending time with Moe or giving his movie snacks to the lonely moviegoers. The moment when he and Flanders share a hug is especially touching.
You're all right, stupid Flanders. You're all right.
Well, this is a whole new relationship for us. We'll be friends in this life and the next.
Whoa, he's getting serious. Is this what I really want?
My best friend is a great runner.
This is a side note, but I realized this episode aired in 2014. And in Major Things, in the flashback sequence where Marge kicks Homer out of the house, was set in 2014. Was this an intentional reference to this episode? Or was it an accident? Either way, I just feel like this episode has a better payoff than Major Things. Okay, now I feel like I'm just picking on Major Things, and I'm really not trying to. This is the 9th episode of the 23rd season. This episode is set 30 years in the future where Bart and Lisa are adults with kids of their own. They go to their parents' house for Christmas and try and reconnect with their own kids. Maggie is pregnant and on her way to her parents as well, but ends up going into labor. After Maggie gives birth, the family is together again and they take another family picture. I always like seeing the future episodes because I like seeing the Simpsons kids as adults. Even though the timeline isn't always consistent, what usually is consistent is what kind of adults the kids grow up to be. Bart being a deadbeat dad who's trying his best makes sense for him. Same with Lisa trying to connect with a daughter who's literally sucked into her technology. Also really like the moment where Bart and Lisa are drinking together and bonding over their respective problems.
Boys think I'm a lousy father. Oh, poor Bart. My daughter thinks I'm a lousy mother. Sorry. Meh, it's okay.
The show has always been really accurate when showing the sibling dynamic, so it's nice to see them being able to accurately portray an adult sibling dynamic as well. To be honest, if The Simpsons had ended back in the 23rd season, this probably would have been the best episode ended on. Since the first episode ever of The Simpsons was a Christmas episode, it would make sense to also end it on a Christmas episode. Although given some of the later Christmas episodes I've seen, I'm kind of glad they didn't. This is the 10th episode of the 32nd season. This episode is basically a parody of Hallmark Christmas movies. It follows an uptight career woman named Mary Tannenbaum. She's a movie producer working for the Hallmark Network, and she has to go to Springfield to shoot one of their newest Christmas movies. Despite her hating Christmas movies, she takes her job seriously since she's trying to get a promotion. While in Springfield, she stays with the Simpsons. Her big city personality immediately puts her at odds with the town, especially with Principal Skinner. They hate each other at first, but eventually get closer. But when Bart reveals all the negative things she said about the town, everyone turns on her. She later realizes she loves the town. She also loves Skinner, and almost leaves her doctor fiance for him until he convinces her otherwise. This is one of the new episodes that I saw for the first time this year and was surprised by how much I liked it. I really appreciated the dedication to the parody, to the point where they have background music playing throughout the entire episode.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. None of this matters. All right, moving on to the Golden Retriever Christmas Sweater Fashion Show.
I sometimes like to watch Hallmark or Lifetime Christmas movies, but I especially like to watch videos that roast them, like Nick DeRamio or The Movie Bitches.
Of course.
So I was able to recognize all the tropes in this episode. I will say, I did scream when I realized that Skinner was going to be the love interest in this episode. And weirdly, it made sense. I screamed even louder when I realized that they were trying to make Skinner seem sexy, which also worked for me. Not in that way. Now I see what Edna saw in him. Regardless, this was a surprisingly delightful episode. This is the 6th episode of the 13th season. After Homer accidentally crashes a rocket into the church, Lovejoy and the church council accept the help of Mr. Burns in order to rebuild it. Burns forces Lovejoy to include ads, photo booths, and the Noid in the church. Lisa becomes disgusted with the commercialization and converts to Buddhism after talking to Richard Gere, world's most famous Buddhist. Marge, concerned with Lisa's soul, tries to convince her to come back to Christianity by using Christmas to lure her.
Lick it. Lick it.
Lisa runs away when she realizes her family's plans, but comes back home when she finds out she can still celebrate Christmas as a Buddhist. Once again, thanks to Richard Gere. I'll admit, this one is particularly high, mainly due to nostalgia. Because of that, it's surprisingly quotable. Like the horror of Babylon. That is a false analogy. No, it's not. It's apt. Apt! In a lot of ways, it's kind of a retread of Lisa the Vegetarian. And while it's not nearly as good as that one was, I say it still holds up very well. This is the 8th episode of the 12th season. After a big snowstorm, every school in Springfield is closed for a snow day on Christmas Eve, except for Springfield Elementary. After Skinner has the kids watch a terrible Christmas movie, he and the kids realize they are snowed inside the school. Skinner goes into military mode in order to keep the kids in line, but after getting trapped inside a snow tunnel, the kids take over. Homer and Flanders team up to go rescue the kids from school, but get frozen in the car. Homer gets the car freed, he crashes it into a silo. Thanks to sodium chloride melting the snow, kids are free and able to go home for Christmas. This is another episode I saw when it originally aired and watched multiple times thanks to the Simpsons Christmas DVD that I had. My favorite gag of the whole episode is the horrible Christmas movie that Skinner forces the kids to watch. The writers are great at writing intentionally bad movies.
I love you too. I am you and you are you. Oh, you and me together you can see.
This is the 7th episode of the 15th season. After getting a large amount of money from selling a rare baseball card, Homer takes the family to the Rich People Mall to shop for presents. He promises to spend the rest of the money on a large Christmas tree, but ends up spending it on a present for himself. After watching the Mr. McGrew version of A Christmas Carol, he decides to become a better person. His generous nature ends up making Flanders jealous, and in an effort to show up Homer, he buys everyone in town a present. After talking to Lisa, Homer gets inspired to steal everyone's presents, thinking they'll be happier without material goods. It goes about as well as you'd expect. He returns all their presents and everyone joins together after seeing a star in the sky.
That's my last flare. Somebody better come soon. Oh, thank goodness, rescue dogs.
I think this episode came out around the time Homer had entered what tends to be called his jerk-ass Homer era.
That's me, jerk-ass Homer.
So I kind of wonder if maybe this episode was written in a response to people complaining about that. Could also be that they just wanted to see Homer do a Grinch parody. Homer's version of "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch" is great, especially the line, "and just a little bit drunk."
And just a little drunk.
The Mr. Magoo parody also always makes me laugh, especially the particularly dark joke of Mr. McGrew sticking his head inside a fireplace.
You're expecting. May I listen to the baby's heartbeat?
I'm also a sucker anytime Dan Castellaneta does his Jimmy Stewart impression.
Santa was in an awful pickle. Beatniks had given drugs to the reindeer, and they were no darn good.
This is the first episode of the first season and was titled The Simpsons Christmas Special. Bart gets a tattoo without permission, and Marge is forced to use all the Christmas money to get it lasered off him. Homer doesn't get his Christmas bonus from work, but he doesn't tell the family that they have no money for gifts. Homer takes a job as a mall Santa so he can afford to give his kids a decent Christmas. Unfortunately, he only earns $13. Barney convinces him to use the money to bet on a dog at the dog track. Homer bets his money on Santa's little helper, who loses. After his owner abandons him, they take him home to the family, who accepts him as the perfect Christmas gift. This episode is ranked so highly not only because it's the first Simpsons Christmas episode, but because it's the first episode of The Simpsons in general. Before this, The Simpsons were shorts on the Tracy Ullman Show. When this episode premiered, it was a big deal. While it may not be as funny as episodes later on in the show, it set the standard for the show as a whole. Even in the first episode, they were able to balance humor and heart. They also set up key characteristics for the characters, like Lisa wanting a pony for Christmas while still being wise beyond her years.
So I hope you bear in mind that any knock at him is a knock at me, and I am far too young to defend myself against such onslaughts.
Or Homer being someone with a short temper, but willing to go through hell for his kids. Basically, wouldn't have The Simpsons if it weren't for this episode, so therefore it deserves a high ranking. This is the 9th episode of the 11th season. After Bart breaks his butt bone and has to rely on a wheelchair, Skinner hires the mob to install a wheelchair ramp, but is conned and loses all of the school's money. The school is then bought by a company that uses the kids to create the perfect toy, Funzo. When Bart and Lisa realize Funzo has been programmed to destroy other toys, with the help of Homer, they go to steal all the Funzos in town to burn them. Gary Coleman tries to stop them, but after arguing through the night, they all reach an agreement. Burns ends up donating money to the school to restore the status quo.
The status quo? Ay, caramba!
That's just sad.
Now, apparently when this episode first aired, it had a lot of mixed reviews, which I find surprising because it has some of my favorite jokes of the show. Now, it might be a generational thing because I'm pretty sure this episode aired when some people were starting to turn on the show. I was a kid when this aired, so I think a lot of the broad comedy really appealed to me. I've also noticed that people who tend to consider seasons 1 through 8 to be the only good seasons of Simpsons tend to be Gen X, while millennials my age tend to like seasons up till 15. This episode also has a lot of quotes that live rent-free in my mind. Is this going to be like one of those horror movies where we open the door and everything's normal, so we think you're crazy, but turns out there really is a killer robot, and the next morning you find me impaled on a weather vane? Is that what this is, Lisa? It also has a lot of really great moments, like Bart and Lisa distracting people with caroling, while Homer is stealing Funzos in the background. Even though I didn't know who Gary Coleman was when I originally watched this episode, as a kid, I thought he was hilarious.
All right, you listen to me, Quan. Hang on, I got another call. Yes, Mr. President, I can be in Washington right away.
Knowing more about his past as a child star and how a lot of that was a sore spot for him, I'm surprised how game he was to making fun of himself. It probably helped that he was the one who got to save the day in the end in the episode. I also love the play that Skinner and the kids put on in order to convince Burns to donate money to the school. As I've said before, the Simpsons are good at stylistic suck humor.
And freeze. Now, who in Springfield will eat the poisoned broth? Oh, it could be anyone, even Mr. Burns.
This play really speaks to me.
This is the 11th episode of the 7th season. In this episode, after watching an ad for a video game called Bonestorm,
Bunny Bonestorm or go to hell!
Bart? Young man, in this house we use a little word called please.
Bart tries to find a way to get it. It results in him shoplifting it and getting caught. He ends up getting banned from the store, but when the family goes there to get their family picture taken, the store's detective shows them the security cape of Bart stealing the game. In an effort to stop mothering him so much, Marge tries to give Bart some space, which causes Bart to think that his mother doesn't love him anymore. When Bart comes home with something hidden in his jacket, Marge thinks he shoplifted again, but finds out he actually got his picture taken for her as a gift. Overjoyed, Marge lets Bart open a present early, and he gets the game all the young boys want, Lee Carvello's Putting Challenge. This was the second Christmas episode of The Simpsons, and it aired many years after the first one, so it had a lot to live up to. You can tell by this ranking, not only did it live up to those expectations, but I think it exceeded them. I think what helped is that this episode aired pretty much when Simpsons was at its peak. Not only in popularity, but also in quality. They were pretty much in their groove at this point. One of the main reasons I ranked it as number 1 is because I relate to it a lot. Now, I've never shoplifted a video game and got banned from a store, but I did have moments in my childhood where I would misbehave and do something to disappoint my mom. anytime I did something particularly bad, she would kind of become very cold towards me. And that was usually enough to make me think my mom didn't love me, which is kind of similar to how Bart felt in this episode. Now that I'm older, I know that's not the case. The saddest moment in the episode is when Bart tries to make a snowman version of himself using the dirty snow from under the car. It breaks my heart every time I see it. When I was younger, I was actually mad at Marge for the way she treated Bart in this episode. Now that I'm older, I can understand Marge's point of view a lot better. Marge was just doing what she thought was best for Bart. It wasn't until that she stopped giving him that affection that he realized how much he actually liked it. Because that affection showed how much his mom cared about him. The moment when Marge sees the framed photo of Bart with the receipt attached is very touching. The episode also has some of my favorite jokes too. The gag where Detective Brodka calls up Marge and Homer and makes it sound like he's actually talking to them, but is actually leaving a voice message is brilliant.
Her son Bart has been caught shoplifting. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a shame, I know, but, well, try and have a Merry Christmas. They weren't home. Uh-huh. But I left a message on their answering machine. That's right.
Apparently his voice actor, Lawrence Tierney, was a massive dick when recording this episode, and he actually didn't understand that joke at all. Despite that, Brodka is hilarious and one of the best one-shot characters on the show. Anyway, that's my ranking of all the Simpsons Christmas episodes. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you have a favorite Simpsons Christmas episode. And overall, just hope you have a Merry Christmas, and thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.
We're dancing to the beat. We'll make you move your feet. Simpsons Christmas boogie.